So in Salesforce, we are going to use primarily two programming languages. One is Visualforce. We will use Visualforce for designing the front end UI. Can I have the microphones muted, everyone, please? Thank you. Okay. So we'll use the Visualforce for designing the front end user interface, right? Now, you must have noticed that Salesforce provides you with a lot of standard pages, page layouts, tabs, apps. There are a lot of these things which are already available. Standard page or user interfaces, rather, let me call it. A lot of UI is already available, right? Sometimes you are in a situation where you are not happy with the UI which has been given by Salesforce, or functionally you require uh, something which can have more features into it, and that's where you need Visualforce. That's where you need to develop your own user interface, right? The same way,
Yes.
there is another thing called Apex, right? So when we are talking about Apex, Apex is the programming language which is used for writing logics, which is used for building up logics, or writing the controlling statements. So again, if you see, there are a lot of options which are available to you by default or out of the box functionalities which allow you to control the logics, like a validation tool, like a workflow rule, approval. So there are so many options which are available. But in case you are in a situation where you want to write you want to write a logic which is not doable using your again those standard declarative functionalities, then you need to write more functionalities using the help of Apex. Okay, so Apex is more for controlling logics, right? Now, since the moment you try to create a user interface, or the moment you try to write your logics, some point of time you will need to also retrieve some data. Whatever functionalities you're going to perform are going to be on the data, right? So when you need to fetch data, when you need to update data, or when you need to create new records, there you need help of there you need help of a query language. So in Salesforce we have two query languages. These are just query languages. These are, you should not consider them as a full-fledged language or something. So we have something called SOQL, Salesforce Object Query Language. This is used for querying the data from the database. And we have one more which is called SOSL, which basically stands for Salesforce Object Search Language. So these two query languages can be used along with Visualforce and Apex for querying the data, or updating the data, retrieving the data. So that sort of things can be done using SOQL and SOSL, right? So we are gonna uh, learn these things, right? So we will start working with Visualforce. So we'll start with Visualforce first, and then eventually we will get into the Apex and SOQL SOSL part of it. So, okay, Visualforce. So Visualforce is primarily a markup language. Basically what would that mean is, it is used for designing markups or user interfaces. It's not a programming language. It's not a proper programming language either. It When I say it's not a programming language, proper programming language, I mean that it cannot handle conditions, loops, logics. Those things cannot be given here. So it is a basic markup language which can only be used for designing certain markups. You want to, let's say you want to create a user interface and you want to have a table of information in that. You want to create the table, you want to create certain headers, you want to put certain logo somewhere. These kind of things can be done, right? So that's what a markup language does. It's very, very similar to HTML, hypertext markup language. It's pretty similar to that. Give me a moment. Yeah, so here we are. What is Visualforce? Visualforce is a framework that allows developers to build sophisticated custom user interfaces. So what is that? Visualforce is a framework, or you consider it as a language that will allow you to build your sophisticated and custom user interfaces that can be hosted natively on force.com platform. So this is something which needs to be kept in mind. These Visualforce pages can be hosted natively on force.com platform. So these Visualforce pages can only be hosted on force.com platform. That's what we have to understand. So Visualforce tags or Visualforce program is not recognized anywhere else. It is only hosted on force.com platform. The Visualforce framework includes a tag-based markup language similar to HTML. Okay, so as I said, what exactly this Visualforce is? It's basically a markup language. What kind of a markup language? Tag-based markup language. Tag-based markup language means for everything there is a tag. For everything there is a tag, right? So when you put a certain tag, the information is displayed in that particular format. All right. So it's a markup language and
Yeah,
it's
got
very,
it.
very similar to HTML. Very, very similar to the normal HTML language that we have. All right. So if I have to, okay, I'm not very sure, how many of you have some understanding of HTML. In case there's someone who has never done anything in HTML, it's not required as well, but if you can spend some time with some HTML tutorials, if you have not done HTML at all, or if you have not been in touch with HTML, if you can spend a few hours with HTML tutorials on w3schools.com, that will be really helpful. Right? So if that can be done, that will be great. Okay. So in HTML, usually, for people who do not have any understanding of what HTML is, HTML is also a markup language used for designing interfaces. And this also has tags. Like if you want to display a text on a web page, and the text is "How are you?" So because it's a markup language and it's a tag-based language, what you need to do is you need to put a tag. How you want to display that text, you just have to put that tag. So there is a tag for making the text bold, there is a tag for making the text italic. So if you want to make it bold, it's like this. Okay, if you want to display the same text in italic format, it's like this. If you want to display it in a header format, okay, so basically, all that you need to do is, or anyone needs to do is, just needs to understand the tags, and whatever they want to, design, they can use the tags to design that. So there's a tag for defining a table, there's a tag for defining a form. So for everything, there's a tag basically. Okay, so that's it. So whatever you want to, display on the page, you just have to use a tag for that. That's what HTML does. So, as I said, people who are very, very new to it can spend some time on w3schools.com HTML tutorials. It's very simple, easy to understand. Even if you don't want to do that, no problem. You can directly learn Visual Force as well. There's no problem at all. Now, Visual Force is also similar to that. Visual Force also has tag for everything. Whatever you want to develop on the user interface, for everything you have a tag. Okay. In Visual Force language, sometimes we will also refer to the tag as Visual Force component. Okay. So we sometimes refer to them as Visual Force components as well, or sometimes we might call it as a tag also, right? Some kind of a language Visual Forces. So that's what Visual Force is. So first thing, before we can actually start learning Visual Force, I would want you to enable the Visual Force on your developer orgs, and we will see how can we create a Visual Force page. Okay, so we'll straight away get into the business. We will start creating Visual Force pages. And before you can create a Visual Force page, there is a small setup change that you need to do. That's basically enabling the development mode of Visual Force. Okay, so how do you enable the development mode? Now, before that, why do we need to enable the development mode? What exactly this development mode will do? All right. So this development mode embeds a Visual Force page editor in your browser. So when you create a Visual Force page, and if you enable the development mode, you will have a page editor embedded in the browser. So what will happen? You will be able to see the page as well as the code in the page editor. Page editor will have the code of the page. Okay. So you will have the option to look into the code right at the browser, and you can edit the code. Okay. This allows you to see code and preview the page at the same time. So it will make things easier for you. So that's what a development mode is going to do. So to enable the development mode, you just have to go to My Settings, Personal, Advanced User Details, click Edit, and then select Development Mode checkbox and click Save. So it's an option which is available under your My Settings. Okay. If you are not the administrator, then you will need to ask your administrator to do this. If you do not have this option available to go and edit this setting for yourself, then you will need to ask your administrator. Okay. So you just need to go to My Settings, Personal, Advanced User Details, click on Edit, Development Mode checkbox, and then click on Save. You guys can do it later. I'll just show it to you on one org. You can just look into it and do it later for your orgs. Stalin, I'll use your login ID password. Yeah, I have that. I have stored that. Okay. So to enable the development mode, as I said, you just have to go to My Settings. And under My Settings, you have Personal. Then you go into Advanced User Details. Click on Edit. Development mode. Here it is. On the right hand side, you will see development mode. You just have to check it. This needs to be checked and click back save. So now the development mode is on. Okay. Now, small thing. Can we not create a Visual Force page without enabling development mode? The answer is we can still create a Visual Force page without enabling the development mode. But the problem is that you will not have the page view as well as the code view parallelly available. So you will not have those views available parallelly. Either you will see the page or you will see the code. So for someone like you who is actually starting to build pages, it's always good to look into the page and code simultaneously so that you can notice whatever changes you're making in the code, what impact it is having on the actual page. Got it? And not just as a beginner, you know, most of the developers, um, let's say 99% of them, do the Visualforce page development using the development mode code editor because it makes things easier for you. You know, whatever you're changing, if you can see the preview right away, makes life easier for you, right? So now we have enabled the development mode, so we are good to go ahead and start creating our Visualforce page. Now, as I said, you know, Visualforce page will allow us to create our own user interface. We are at a position where we can start creating our user interface. Okay, so creating your first Visualforce page, it's gonna be pretty simple. All that you have to do is you just have to go to your browser. Don't do it right now. Just follow my screen. You can do it later also. So on your browser, you just have to add a slash apex slash page name to the URL after salesforce.com. So on your browser, you have salesforce.com. Delete everything after that, and after salesforce.com, put a slash, then type apex, put another slash, and type your page name. So hello is the page name here. It can be anything. Okay, you just have to ensure that your page name does not have spaces and special characters. That's it. Page name can be anything. Okay, just no space, no special character, should not start with a number. If your Salesforce instance is this, for example, the new URL should be like this. As I said, delete everything after salesforce.com slash, after salesforce.com, put a slash, type apex slash page name. Page name can be anything. Alright, here it is. So you just have to go to the URL, as I said, delete everything after salesforce.com, type apex slash page name. Page name can be whatever you want. Okay, just make sure that you are not entering a special character or space in the page name. That's it. My page name is V1. Press enter. The moment you press enter, you will find an error. What is the error? It says this page does not exist. You cannot find that page. But just below that, it will give you the option to create that page. So that's it. Okay. Just click on this and your page will get created. Now your page is ready. You just created a Visualforce page V1. Okay. And this is how your page looks. So currently there is nothing in it. You just have to put what content you want to display on the page. But this is how your page looks, right? Where is the code editor that we were talking about? That is here. Told you that you will have access to a code editor, right? This is the code editor. Click on this, it opens up the code. So this is the code for this page. See, congratulations. Instead of congratulations, I want to write hello. If you make any changes in the code, you just need to click on the save button here and the changes will be displayed here. Okay, So if we just quickly look into this code, line number 2 and 6 are just comments. Comments means they would not have any effect on the page. Okay, in any programming language, a comment does not have any effect. Now, this line number 3 is hello, and hello has a tag, h1 tag. Remember, I was just talking to you about HTML tags sometime back, and I said there's a header tag for HTML called h1, right? So this is an HTML tag. A lot of HTML tags are recognized in Visualforce page, right? So for simple stuff, you can use HTML tags also, right? And this apex page is your Visualforce tag. This is the Visualforce page tag or Visualforce page component, Visualforce component to define the page. Okay, so that's what we have here. So we have HTML tag here. Now let's say if you want a line break here, after how are you, you need a line break, or after hello, you need a line break. So you can simply write this. Now this is also an HTML tag. BR is an HTML tag for line break. Visualforce understands this. Got it? This how are you? I just want to make it italic. So there is an italic tag for it. Alright. So that's how your Visualforce page is, the initial Visualforce page. Now, whatever you want to put in the Visualforce page, you just need to keep on adding those things. So that's what we are actually going to learn how to put data and all that thing. But this is how it works. So you create the page and then just keep on adding what you exactly want to display on the page and all that stuff. Right. So that's one way of creating a Visualforce page. You can create the Visualforce page through another way. Alternatively, the other way of creating a Visualforce page is from setup. So we created it from the URL, right? So this is the most common way of creating a Visualforce page from the URL. Sometimes, but this way will work only. You will be able to create a Visualforce page using this approach only if your development mode is on. Okay, this URL approach will work only if the development mode is on. If development mode is not on, you will not be able to create a page using this approach. Other way of creating a Visualforce page is from setup menu. You just have to go to setup develop pages, click on new, and you create a page. How do you do that? So this is V1. Let me create another page, but this time I'm gonna go to create the page from setup menu. So just go to setup, develop, Visualforce pages. See, V1 is already there. You can click on new. Okay, and click on save. Okay. Now this is what we have here. This is the code. Okay. So here you don't have that liberty to look into how exactly it is getting affected. Now even if I have to make some changes, I won't understand how it is actually going to look on the page. So for that reason, this is not a preferred way, but I just want you to know this option as well. Sometimes if you do not have the development mode enabled, and you still have to create a page, then this is one way, right? Okay. So we are done with how to set up or how to create a Visual Force page. We understand how to create a Visual Force page. Now let's understand a few terminologies on Visual Force. A few things which you will require to basically design your Visual Force page. Now creating the page is done. We understand we will enable the development mode and we will create the Visual Force page. Now for building your Visual Force page, for designing a Visual Force page, you are going to use certain components. That's what we are going to understand now. So a page definition consists of two primary elements. Now let's get into the definition of the page, defining the page or building the page. A Visual Force page usually consists of two elements. Okay. What are those elements? The Visual Force markups. Okay. What is the Visual Force markup? Markup defines the user interface components. Okay. So a Visual Force page will have markups. What are markups? Markups are user interface components that should be included on the page and the way they should appear. So markups basically refers to the components that appear on the page and the way they appear. Correct? Like a text, an image, logo, table, hyperlink, button. So these are all markups. Okay. So for example, if you consider your Visual Force page as a stage, markup belongs to all that appears on the stage. The actor, the actress, the background, the villain, everything. So whatever is visual and what appears on the page, that is all markup. Okay. So apart from that, what else do we have on a Visual Force page? We have Visual Force controllers. So apart from all the components which appear on the page, you also need a controller for a Visual Force page. What is the role of a controller? It's basically going to control the logics and instructions. So it is basically the set of instructions which is going to control the entire page. So for example, if there is a button on the Visual Force page, that button itself is a markup. But what happens when you click on the button, that is the instruction written in a controller. So Visual Force page needs to have the markup as well as controller. So what is a controller? It's basically a set of instructions that specify what happens when a user interacts with the components specified in associated Visual Force markup. So what will happen when a user interacts with the markups? That instruction is written in a controller. So controller is something which you cannot see on the Visual Force page, but it needs to be defined. Alright. So such as when a user clicks a button or link. So what will happen when a user clicks on a button or link? That's the instruction written in a controller. Controllers also provide access to the data that should be displayed in a page. Now, when you are creating a Visual Force page and when you are trying to display data on the page, most of the times that's what you will do. You will create a Visual Force page for displaying data, right? Because CRM related information. So when you're trying to display data, your controller also controls how much data will come on the Visual Force page. So let's say if I create a Visual Force page uh, for displaying contact information. So it is obviously not going to show all the contact information at one page. Either it will show one contact or 10 contacts or 50, whatever. So that has to be defined in the controller, that which all contacts, how many contacts are to be displayed on a certain page, how they are going to be displayed on the page is what the markup will take care of. But what data will come on the Visual Force page, that's the logic written in the controller. Okay, right. So as we saw, there are two primary elements on the Visual Force page. One is markup and the other is controller, right? So markups and controllers. Now, markups we already understand anything that appears on the page, and it's pretty simple. As if you consider the current page, the one that we created. This page does not have any controller. If you look into this particular page, this is a markup, this is also markup, this is also markup. There is no controller. I mean, so far we have not written any controlling logics for it. And this page is not doing anything also. That's the reason why it is just a static page. Okay. So currently it's not doing anything. It's not fetching information from anywhere. It's not performing any action. There's nothing on this page. It's just a plain markup page. Okay. So that's what markup is. Along with this, you can have other components also displayed on the page like table of data, a logo, an image, a button, right, a form, input field, a lot of things, right. See, if you go to Google, this is a markup, this is also markup. Now whatever you see here is all markup. So what is the controller? When you type something here and you press enter, or when you click on this button, then what action will be performed, that's the controller. Got it? Rest everything whatever you can see like this logo and all these things, these are all markup. Okay. Okay, so now let's get back to the controller part. So markup is easy. I think you understand what a markup is. Controller is something which I would want you to spend a little more time on and understand a little more. So controller basically the set of instructions. From where are we getting the set of instructions? Do we always need to write the controlling logics? So Salesforce, as you must have seen, Salesforce everywhere has an option of standard versus custom. Standard object, standard field, standard app, custom app. Same way the controllers can also be the standard controllers and custom controllers. What is a standard controller? Standard controller refers to the controllers which are used by Salesforce.com on their standard pages. So this is a very important concept for you to understand. Try and understand this. Salesforce, right at the beginning of the session, I said that there are a lot of pages which Salesforce automatically provides us. Think about this. When you go to account and you click on an account, this is also a page. This is a standard Salesforce page, but this is a page. When you click on edit, it has a certain instruction defined. When you click on delete, it has some instructions on it. When you click on include offline, there's some instruction on it, right? So when this page is there, when you have this page, there has to be a controller associated with it. There must be some place where Salesforce.com has written the set of instructions to control this page, to control the logics on this page. That is the standard controller for account. Okay, that's the standard controller for account page. Same way, if you go to contacts and if you open a contact account, sorry, if you open a contact record, yeah, if you open a contact record, you will see that the same kind of page, and then there are a lot of buttons, or these buttons will perform different actions. So there is a lot of instruction which is defined for contact page also. So there is a standard controller for contact pages as well, right? So for every object that you have in Salesforce, you have a standard controller predefined, because for every object you have pages, and for controlling those pages the controllers are already there. Those are called standard controllers, right? So it's not necessary for you to always go and create your own controller. Sometimes you can use the standard controllers also. So to make our lives easier, Salesforce allows us to use the standard controllers as well on our Visualforce pages. So if you just want the look and feel of the page to be different, but you are okay with the logics of Salesforce.com, the standard controller logics, you can still use the standard controller. Okay. But if you really want to, go ahead and update the controlling logics and the instructions, then you'll have to write your own controller. Got it? So there are four types of controllers that you can use in Salesforce. The first one is the standard controller. So what's a standard controller? A standard controller consists of the same functionality and logic that is used for a standard Salesforce page. Okay, so these are predefined controllers and you don't even have to do anything. You don't have to create the controller or you don't have to write the logic or anything. You just have to go ahead and call the controller. That's it. Okay, so your life becomes easier when you're using a standard controller because you are not writing the instructions, you are just calling the set of instructions. That's it. But the other side of it is that because it's a standard set of logics, you will not be able to use your own logics here. Okay, then there is a standard list controller. Standard list controller is also similar to the standard controller, but it is used for displaying list of records. Standard controller is used for one single record page. All right. So list controller refers to the pages where you try to display list of records. A standard list controller enables you to create Visualforce pages that can display or act on a set of records. Okay. But the concept remains same. You are not writing the instructions. We are utilizing the standard set of instructions from Salesforce.com. Then comes the custom controller. What is a custom controller? Custom controller is basically where you write the controlling logics. Okay. So if you feel that you are not able to manage your page with the standard set of functionalities, what you require is more than what standard functionalities offer, then you should create your own controller. Okay, which means then you should write your own uh, logics and instructions. That's the custom controller. A custom controller is a class written in Apex. Okay. Custom controller will be written using Apex because sometime back I told you Visualforce does not have any option of handling logics and loops and all those things, right? So for writing logics you need Apex. So custom controller is written in Apex that implements all of a page's logic without leveraging a standard controller. So a custom controller would not leverage a standard controller. If you use a custom controller, you can define new navigation elements or behavior. So custom controller, though it is going to be a little difficult for you to create it, time consuming factor. But the point is that you will have the option of introducing your own functionalities or behaviors on the page. Then there is something called controller extension. What is a controller extension? A controller extension is a class written in Apex that adds to or override behavior in a standard or custom controller. So a controller extension is very similar to a custom controller. Okay, this is also written in Apex, but this can be combined with an existing controller. So this is, as the name says, extension. This can be used for extending the functionalities of an existing controller. That's what a custom controller would do. Controller extension would do. Sorry, right? So these are four types of controllers that are available: standard, standard list, custom, and controller extension. For now, you just have to keep in mind two. Okay, standard and custom. We are going to do all these one by one. So we are going to go into each one of them. If even if you do not understand the controllers properly, don't worry, we are going to do examples on each one of them. So for now you just have to understand to, just keep in mind that you have standard and you have custom. So we have the option of leveraging the standard controller or the standard set of logics which have been written by Salesforce. In that case, you don't need to write the logic, you just need to control the markup. The other option that you have is you write your own controller. It means you write your own set of instructions, you write your own logics. Right? Are we good? Let me know if anyone has any questions so far. Okay. So there are a couple of other terminologies which I want you to understand. There's something called a component and attribute. Okay. So in Visual Force page, while you're defining a Visual Force page, you will have components and you have their attributes. Components, as I said earlier, components are like tags. Okay. So in HTML, we have tags. For Visual Force, we call them components. Okay. Now this Visual Force components, why do we need Visual Force component? We need a component to define things on our Visual Force page. For everything that you want to define, you have to define a component. Okay. And the most common component is your Apex page component. So a component ideally starts and ends. This is the most common component of Visual Force. Every page has to have this component, Apex page component. If you go to the page that we just created, you will see this. So every Visual Force page you are creating has to start with an Apex page component. Okay. This way there are hundreds of components which are available. If you want to create a button, there is a component for that. If you want to create a table, there is a component for that. If you want to create a form, there is a component for that. If you want to create an input field, there is a component for that. If you want to create a hyperlink, there is a component for that. If you want to display an image, there is a component for that. For everything. Alright. So that makes your life easier. Whatever you want, you just have to call that particular component. If you want a table, you just have to call the table component. If you want to create a block, a rectangular block, you have to call the block component. Okay. So for everything there is a component, and your Visual Force components usually will start with Apex colon. This is going to be common part. As you can see there are so many other components. There's a component for displaying messages. There's a component for block, a block section, buttons, a lot of things. Okay. So that's what a component is. In Visual Force, we don't call them tags. Sometimes you might call it as a tag also, but it's better if uh, you stick to the terminology component. That's one thing. Every component has a few attributes. Now we have understood that we will use components. For example, let me show you one more component here. It's page block. Okay, so the block, page block is another component. What does it do? It creates a small rectangular block here. If you cut this information from here and paste it here inside the block, so see what we have done. I already had the page component. Inside the page component, I've created a page block component. What does that page block component do? It basically creates a rectangular block for me. Inside that, I've written whatever my text was, right? So that's how it is. Now, for each component, so these are components. We will actually look into more component examples in the sessions. For each component, there are a few attributes. Every component has got certain attributes, okay, which control how your component appears. For like in case of a page component, Apex page component, there's an attribute called sidebar. You can make it true or false. You make it false. So this is the attribute of the component. Okay. What will this do? This will remove the sidebar bar from this page. Click on save. See, there's another attribute for this component called show header. This will remove the header also. Got it? So your page component has these kind of attributes. Uh, the same way, if I go to page block has another set of components, like one is title. Okay, so if you define the title attribute, it will display a title at top of the page block. See, so all your components have got certain attributes. All right. So that's how you actually control whether now you have created a page block. Now whether you want to display a title or not, you have the option. If you want to display a title, define a title attribute. If you don't want to display it, so don't do it. The same way, when you create a page component, you have the option whether you want to display the sidebar, you want to display the header, and there are a lot of other things which can be done. All right. So the controller of a page is also going to be defined as an attribute of the page component. What controller you are going to use on the page, that also needs to be defined in the page component as an attribute. But that's something which ideally we'll get into in our next session. I just wanted to give you some idea on that. So got it. So the other thing that I want you to understand is the component and attribute concept. All the components that we use in Visualforce page, we have a list of attributes associated with each component, which makes your life even more easier. You will have even more options of controlling the look and feel of the component that you are displaying on the Visualforce page. Got it? So that's what we are going to discuss today. Tomorrow once we meet, we are going to start working with the first controller, which was the standard controller. Right? So we'll start working with our standard controller in tomorrow's session. Let me know if anyone has any question or doubt here.